Hello, YouTube. So one thing I want to bring up before I start this review, I love the show, so I might be giving it a very high rating. And also that this one's going to be pretty lengthy because this is my very first time reviewing a TV show, not necessarily a movie. Now, I have reviewed Over the Garden Wall, but that was only 10 episodes, and they're all in a continuing story. Technically, you could count it as just a long movie. So, for this one, it's going to be pretty long. So, just be aware of that. Also, I'm going to have two new parts for my review. Um, Now, these will only be for TV shows if I ever do a TV show again. And, well, I really want to try it out. And since there are so many things to talk about with this show, I had to split them up, or else it would just be far too long. So I'm going to have a separate part for the good guys and the villains, because there are so many. Now, I'm only going to be talking about recurring characters here, like main villains. So, like the shapeshifter from season 2 and 3, he only had 2 appearances, and he didn't really offer much, so I'm not bringing him in. Um, then there's also so many other villains that came in the Avalon story arc, so I'm not talking about them. Unless if they were like big villains like Titania or Oberon, or the awesomeness of Puck. But I will be talking about them, but if there are some villains I leave out, then I'm sorry for that. It's just like, there are so many villains on this show, it's hard to talk about every single one without getting a very long episode here. So, I don't want it to be too long for you guys, so I did have to split those two parts in half. And I'm also going to be talking about the other seasons on the show, seeing as what I'm going to be mainly talking about in the story is the overall idea of the show and the 5-part pilot. So, I'm going to be talking about that, but then I'm going to have a part in this with the other seasons, where I'm just talk about, like, what's going on with those, like, what those ones did, my favorite episodes in the show, stuff like that. So, without further ado, let's go into it. Okay, so for the story, basically you could just go and watch the intro to the show with Keith David's awesome narration, but here's my take on it. So for the plot of the pilot episode, we get to learn that in 940 AD, there was this race called Gargoyles, who were stone by day, creature by night. What happened to them? Well, that's where it gets hard to explain. Yes, already it's hard to explain. Um, there is a lot that happens in this 5-part intro, so there is a lot to talk about here. But basically they are betrayed by the only human that they trusted, who made an alliance with these Vikings so that they could sack the castle. So then they could sack this castle, but leave the gargoyles unharmed. This Viking, of course, broke this clause, and, well, just destroyed the gargoyles. But it turned out that one of the gargoyles was working with them, which was Demona. She is a very important part of the story that will fit in later. But she was the love of the main gargoyle, Goliath. So, yeah, he's been betrayed. Never learned, really. Didn't really learn in this 5-part intro, but yeah, been betrayed. So Goliath, his partner Hudson, well, his really good friend Hudson, were left out of the castle when it was ransacked, and when all his Stone Gargoyle clan was destroyed, and there were 4 of the gargoyles locked in the rookeries. on punishment, so they survive. But they only come out to see the smashed stone of all their family. Kids! Kids, we hope you're cool with this, massacring of gargoyles. Yeah, you better be cool with that. Oh, and also, the show has blood. Yeah, blood. How many times do you see that in cartoons nowadays? Blood. That is awesome. For some reason, that is awesome. So now the gargoyles want revenge because, well, their whole entire family has been destroyed and everything that they ever knew has been lost because they live by the motto, one gargoyle cannot stop protecting a castle as he can stop breathing the air. So their castle has now been taken over, it's been destroyed, so they have nothing left to protect, they have no family left, so of course they're gonna be in the mood for revenge. So they go back, over to where the Vikings are, which they know where the Vikings are. Conan attacked them the last night for some reason. Yeah, they know where the Vikings are, why couldn't they have attacked them? Did they just want to be fair? Like, we're not in battle right now, so we won't attack you? I don't know. But then they get there, and it turns out that the princess and the mage are basically being auctioned off. Again, kid show. Yeah, hostages. Kids, we hope you get hostages. So when they realize that the gargoyles have found them, even though they wouldn't have come if their idiot leader didn't smash the gargoyles. Oh yeah, and the guy who didn't want that to happen, I guess he was cool with the situation because he doesn't bring it up again until Goliath's there, which is the main gargoyle. But of course, they decide to take the princess and decide, well, we're not going down alone, so let's kill her on a cliff for some reason. We can't just kill her in this cave, that's impossible. So they go and take the princess for some reason, no discernible reason, they just want to kill her, I guess. Instead of getting the money for her, which would be a smarter option, but they don't. Kind of idiots. But then they eventually fall off a cliff to their death. So again, kids show. And Goliath has now been denied everything. Even his revenge. Bummer. So, when he gets back, after all the people of the village have been freed from the Vikings, what do they find? His clan is now stone at night. What has happened here? The Archmage. He, cast a spell on them while he was mad with grief, thinking that the princess was being killed. He cast a spell that would turn them into stone until their castle rose above the clouds. They, of course, think that this is impossible and say that they are dead. So, what Goliath says, while not wanting to live the rest of his life without any friends or anything, not thinking that, hey, maybe I could go find some other gargoyles. No, that's impossible. But he says to the Archmage, cast her spell one more time. He does this because he's an idiot, and they are left with their eggs. And wait a minute! They still have eggs? So they can continue their race and protect them, but no, I guess it's just smarter to leave them. Great parents here. So they are now cast in stone for 1,000 years. But 1,000 years later, a rich man named Xantos, who read the Archmage's book, decides, well, I'll test this theory. So he takes the castle that he has now bought and moves the whole entire thing up on top of a skyscraper so it can technically be above the clouds. He really wanted this. So he's really hoping that this doesn't disappoint him after cussing. Yes, and yeah, another kid thing, they cuss in the show. They said the H word. I don't have my coin jar right now, so I can't repeat the line, but it was awesome. I had to rewind it the first time I heard it. But now they're risen above the clouds, so now Xantos waits eagerly at night to see if they will come to life. They of course do, with the most epic yawn ever, and now they've woken up in 1994. Yeah, the show was like 20 years old. So now they have woken up in this unfamiliar time. They don't know what's going on, but they see that the castle is being robbed, so they decide, well, it's still our castle. Let's go protect it. So they go fight them off, and this of course leads a lot of debris onto the ground, where a curious, no-nonsense cop, Elisa Mazza, discovers it. She, of course, goes up wondering what the heck is going on, and then she sees that there are gargoyles. Curious as to what's going on, she falls off the roof. She is truly the best cop ever here. But upon falling off the building, she is then saved by the head of the gargoyles, Goliath, and we learn that they cannot in fact fly, but they glide across the air. So that's kind of an interesting fact, but then how do they get off this building that they went over to as Goliath saved her? Well, their claws are strong enough to go through solid stone, so he just climbs up. I guess that was a stupid question to ask anyway. So now Elisa has discovered that there are gargoyles. She is not so shocked by this after falling off the building. Yeah, she's just cool with it now. Gargoyles, cool. I mean, I guess I would have the same reaction. Gargoyle to save my life. Cool. What else is there to say about it? So now she's sort of teaching them about what New York is like. And they decide that there are dangers from inside and out of the city. But then they soon discover that there are dangers even inside their own castle, as Xantos turns out to be a person who had attacked Goliath, and who also called the people to come and steal from his castle. Why would he do this? Because he wants these little discs. He really wanted these. Obviously. But then we get more shocking news that Demona is still alive. Yes, she's still alive. She tells Goliath that she asked the Archmage to turn her to stone again, along with him, but she sort of lies about this, because she's actually been living throughout the centuries, and has even made some pretty interesting deals with people, and has seen the worst of humanity. So now, hating humanity, she teams up with a human. Makes sense to me. Now we'll talk more about her in the villain part, because there is a lot to go over with her. She's a very complex and well-developed character. But since I'm just talking about the pilot, there's just a few things to talk about with her, because this is where she's first introduced, so they had to build the character from the ground up. So eventually, after having stolen these discs for Xantos, thinking that it would be an act of payment, seeing as, well, he gave Goliath Demona back, so I guess he thought, okay, yeah, that's cool. And now they're working with him pretty well until they find out that he's the one who set them up. So now he's, of course, using a steel clan that he has now made of gargoyles, all modeled after Goliath. He is now using them to fight them against the gargoyles that haven't even betrayed him. One gargoyle leaves, and this is what causes him to do this. Idiot! I mean, he's a cool villain, but idiot. I mean, God, that's really stupid. Why do that? You still have all these gargoyles thinking that you're completely trustworthy. Why just do that? I guess he really wanted to do it, I don't know. And then we find out what Demona has been doing all this time. Goliath asks why she did it. It's because she gave up on humanity long ago. So after a fight with guns, again, kids show, guns, yay, totally makes sense to me. Both Elisa and Demona end up getting sort of pushed off the castle by a giant piece of cement. Okay. And this is Elisa's second time falling off this castle. She only does this in this pilot episode, but she really likes falling off this castle. And so when she falls off, Goliath, of course, has to make the choice, should I save Demona or should I save her? Well, since Elisa can't fly, I'll save her. So he saves Elisa, letting Demona fall. He is about ready to kill Xantos by making him fall off his own building, much like Demona's death, or at least much like her supposed death, seeing as I already brought up that she comes back and gets more development. It's kind of easy to assume that she's not dead. Oh yeah, and did I mention that there are spoilers in this video? Yeah, there are spoilers in this video. So if you want to watch the show, just get out. Sorry, I guess I forgot to bring that up. So now they are, of course, living in their castle, thinking that they have beaten Xantos, but he's only been arrested for one thing, which is robbery, and he's only gotten about 6 months since. Heck, they're lucky that he's not on suspension. So now Lisa's telling them, okay, but you can't stay here. It's good that you won, but you can't stay here. He's gotta come back. But they decide, no, we like it here, so we're gonna stay here until episode 8, where they just move to a clock tower. Actually, it's a pretty cool clock tower, and thus the rest of the series continues. Now, what's really good about this show is mainly the stories. These stories are not just like little kid material, like they were doing at the time on the show, in the Disney afternoon setup. And this show was dark. It had a lot of really dark, heavy material for kids. There's even one episode about gun safety. Did you ever expect that in a Disney cartoon? And they actually do show it in a very good way. They show how playing with a gun is dangerous, but it's even more dangerous to just leave a gun lying around. Elisa learns this the hard way by getting shot and coming very close to death. Yeah, again, kid material, totally. And there's actually blood in this show, which definitely impacts that episode a whole lot more. But I'll talk about my favorite episodes in the other seasons part. But this show did take itself very seriously while remaining an action cartoon and still being, of course, a cartoon. Having kind of cartoony moments and some comic relief. but the comic relief will eventually get some good development too. And I frankly love this show. I love what they did with the stories mainly, though. It is mainly very character driven, but they do a lot with it and what they had. So I think they did pretty good. Sorry, I think I just heard my dad outside. Sorry, I thought it was gonna come in. But it really does have a lot of character and heart behind these stories. The characters all get very good development, except for the ones that aren't there that much. But even then, they do get some pretty good development for their short amount of time, at least. There is a lot that happens later on in the show, which again I'll bring up in the other seasons part. I'll bring those up very, very quick because this is just me talking about 5 episodes. This was a 74 episode series, so there's a lot to talk about. But for the story overall, I'm gonna give it a 10. I really do like how he did this. There's a lot of Shakespearean aspects in the story, and it all pays off. All the characters do feel like really good developed Shakespearean characters. So everything in here is really interesting. So now on to the main protagonist. Not talking about the villains in that next part, but the protagonist. So yeah, on to that. So for the main characters, there are of course a lot of things to talk about. But I'm not going to be talking about non-recurring characters or ones that just appear for like 2 episodes. I'm just going to be talking about the general good guys on the show. So of course we first have Goliath, voiced by Keith David, and oh my gosh, this guy's voice just gets awesomer with time. I swear, this guy's voice is the coolest voice ever. Really, just watch the intro to the show with his narration. It's the coolest voice ever. But this character was still pretty interesting and very tragic, actually. You keep on thinking throughout the whole entire first season that he's lost everything. He's lost his friends, his whole entire clan was massacred. Still strange that I can say massacre associated with a Disney cartoon. It still feels a little bit strange, but awesome at the same time. He also lost the person that he used to be in love with. I mean, they were basically like a married couple, and now it's sort of like they got divorced, so that's sort of what happened, or at least that's how the show for years brought it up in a commentary, which I watched. Yeah, I'm a loser. And you also feel really bad for him because he does everything he can to try and protect people in the past, but no matter what, everyone hated him. No matter what he did, around every corner there was someone who hated him. And that's sort of how they still got treated in the present. Of course, at the end of the series, people do become more accepting to them, but still doesn't feel like everyone's fully convinced. There was eventually a KKK for these guys. I mean, it seems that they were the Klan. Wait a minute. Okay, I forgot their name, but there was like a KKK for these guys. Eventually, later on in the series, who destroyed Gargoyles while they were stoned. Kind of playing unfairly there, but yeah, they still did that. But you really do feel for this character. He's lost so much, yet he's still trying to protect people. You would think he would have a negative outlook on humanity, but instead he does try and protect people. He does try and save people. He does whatever he can. So he's a really good and developed character, as are most of these. But the next one that we have up is Hudson. Oh my gosh, this guy is so cool. He's sort of like the old veteran character on the show, but he is really fun. He mainly just sits around and watches TV, but when he does get into fights and stuff, he is the only one with a sword. Why? I don't know. But the creators brought up in saying that He's older, he has more time, he has had his he's getting older, he needed a weapon, pretty much. Just to sort of even things out. So they gave him a sword that would change in sizes eventually. Um, but he was a very good character. He actually did gain a human friend in the show, which was really cool. Sort of like how Goliath does with Elisa. In season 2, I think, or maybe season 1, I can't quite remember. He does gain a human friend who is blind, but so of course he's just like, okay, well, he can't see who I really am, so maybe I can hang out with this guy. But of course, this guy is not stupid, and eventually in season 3, he just says, yeah, I already knew you were a gargoyle. I already knew. I'm cool with it. Because he's just that awesome. Um, Although sadly, the voice actor for his good friend passed on, and they got a new voice actor for season 3. Very sad there. But he still did gain a new friend. He was sort of like one of the people who'd go out there and be like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna get a new friend. I'm gonna try and gain some allies here. So their ally was a blind man, who was awesome though. But I'm getting off of Hudson. Hudson still did have a very no-nonsense attitude, and he was very fun to watch. So after him is Elisa, who, not as fun as the other characters, was still a pretty good developed character. Um, she was a no-nonsense cop, and even though she puts up with a lot of nonsense with these guys, you can still see where she's coming from. She still wants to do what's right for these guys. She still wants to do good by them. So she's like the only human friend that they have. And that's something that's very special to her, as seen in an episode with Matt Bluestone, who I will talk about next. Um, but there is a lot of fun character to come off of her. They didn't want to make her the damsel in distress, and she definitely isn't. Aside from in episode 2 where she constantly falls off buildings. But aside from that, no, she's not the damsel in distress. She does fight for herself. She does have a gun, which she uses actually quite a lot. And she actually has come close to death being with these guys, and she still stands with them. She still hangs out with them. She's still an ally. So she's a very cool character, and she definitely puts up with a lot with these guys. Some that you wouldn't even think that she would even want to be there for. But then of course there was her partner, Matt Bluestone. Oh my gosh, there's something about this guy that is so cool. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's his design, which is really cool. I'm a big fan of trench coats for some reason, which he always wears. Maybe it's his personality and how he's sort of like a conspiracy nut, which is kind of fun, and how they do it with this show. They don't really fully make him a conspiracy nut stereotype. He's not Agent Mulder or anything, even though he is kind of close to him. But he is a very fun character. I really did like what they did with them. He was a very cool character, and he was fun to have around. And he's actually the second person to discover the gargoyles, and he goes to extremes to find this out. I won't spoil it for you here, but he goes to extremes to find out about these gargoyles and Elisa's relationship with them. And then after him is Broadway, who I didn't really like as much, but I do admit he is still a pretty fun character. His character's definition is basically the fat one in the group. Yeah, really, that's kind of his whole entire character. But he does become more fleshed out throughout the series, wanting to be like a good right-hand man. He does try and be a good partner with people, and he's eventually one that falls in love. Oh god. Yeah, he falls in love with someone who I will talk about later. But yeah, he does find love, and that happens. Doesn't really get all that dived into, but yeah, it's still kind of a fun character to have around. After him is Bronx, who is the dog of the Gargoyles, or as the show creator has confirmed, that there's a separate species of gargoyles called gargoyle beasts, which is what Bronx falls into. He is a dog gargoyle who sadly cannot fly. I never understood that. Like, why not give him wings? That'd be awesome. I mean, he's always like left being carried by all the other gargoyles. It's so sad. I feel so bad for him. He can't fly with them, but he's still a pretty nice character. Very cool character, and he does have a lot of dog personality. Yeah, he doesn't have that much of a personality aside from being a dog, but he's an awesome dog. He's pretty much like Wallace. I mean, Gromit from Wallace and Gromit, if he were a gargoyle. Pretty much picture him like that, and then you've got Bronx. He's a very awesome character and a lot of fun. And now the next character that we got is Lexington. Now this was sort of the tech guy of the group. I guess like the Ninja Turtle with the purple bandana. Yeah, okay. I don't know much about Ninja Turtles because I don't care. But he's like that one. And he's an okay character. He does get more fleshed out in season 3, which probably the worst season, but he does get a little bit more development there. Probably one of my favorite episodes with him in it is the 6th episode, The Hunt, I think it was, where he meets this group of people who he saw on TV called the Pack. Apparently, they actually do get all worked down, do real stunts. Totally like TV today. Everyone does their own stunts nowadays. Everyone really fights people on TV now. Totally how that works. But pretty much he meets them and he sort of thinks that he can trust them, sort of into conclusions because of what he saw on TV, and go figure, they want to hunt them. So here is sort of what sets him up for the rest of the show, is how he really does hate these villains, and I'll talk about them later, and he also sort of is a little bit less trustworthy, because at this point, he pretty much trusted Lisa and thought, well, I mean, there's gotta be other humans out there that are like her, we just gotta look for them. So that's sort of how he is at first, but then once he meets the Pack, he's a whole lot less trustworthy of people. For that episode. Yeah, that doesn't really come back, but that's probably because they never really go out there and look for other people like Elisa. I guess they just didn't want to meet anyone else. But pretty much that's what happened with him there. And it was actually kind of interesting. He does bring up, like, yeah, well, we gotta look for these people. I mean, Goliath still mistrusts people because of the massacre, but he is a little bit more forgiving. He's like, yeah, okay, but it's been 1,000 years. Don't you think that people must have changed by now? And it turns out that they don't. So that was kind of a good setup for some of the villains on the show and sort of how they work. And I think it was also a good setup for Lexington, seeing as he doesn't really trust people full throttle anymore after this. It's sort of like he's less trustworthy, but he still considers the whole entire clan his family, so he still trusts them in at least completely. So he's a pretty loyal character to the rest of the group, aside from in the episode Future Tense. I will bring that one up later. That one's definitely getting brought up. But he's sort of just like the tech guy. There's not much to him, but he's still a pretty good character. And then after him is Brooklyn. I don't know why, but I really like this character. I don't know, maybe it's just because of one of the episodes that I'll talk about later, but he's he's a pretty good character. I don't know. He sort of takes things a little bit more seriously than the rest of the trio, which is Broadway, Lexington, and Brooklyn. But he takes things a little bit more seriously, which is probably what gets him up to second in command. And he does take his second in command role very seriously. Like, he takes it with complete responsibility, and I think he was good for the job. He's a pretty serious character, but he's still a comedy relief. He still sort of came in here as a comedy relief. But I think that all the characters out of the trio definitely got much more development, so they became much more interesting. Um, so he's a pretty good character. He's one of my favorites on the show. And then after him is probably the last protagonist to talk about. There's still a whole lot more villains, um, which is Angela. Now, Angela is the girl character. I mean, she can fight back. She is pretty cool at times, but there's not much of a personality behind her. They try and make her strong and interesting, but I feel bad for her that it doesn't work, because she could have been a really cool and developed character, but they don't really spend that much time focusing on her. She's just sort of, yeah, okay, she's here, but what do we do with her? Like, they made her in season 2, and it turns out that she's Goliath and Damona's daughter. Big shock there. I mean, Jesus. We that has got to be the strangest mother and father relationship ever, for her at least. But pretty much, I think the thing that really came out of her is how Damona and Goliath react to her being their daughter. And also, she is the one that Broadway, sorry, falls in love with, and there's a dumb love triangle between Brooklyn and Broadway and Angela, which luckily it's just like an episode and then it's just like glanced over. Although it makes sense, like she's the only girl gargoyle that they've seen in 1,000 years. It makes sense that they would kind of fight for her affection. And that's kind of what she seems like here. She's just sort of doesn't get full development like the other characters do. And that's kind of a shame. She could have been a cool character, but unfortunately we don't learn too much about her, nor do we learn anything that would separate her from, well, another one of the girl members in any other action series. So there's not too much with her. Now there are some more good guys that will come into the show later, and again, I'm bringing up some spoilers here. Like, we would find out that, the princess from episode 1 and 2, the Archmage, and Tom, remember little Tom? He was like the 6-year-old from 940 80. Remember him? No? Well, if you haven't seen the show, then that makes sense, but actually, if you haven't seen the show, then go watch it. What are you doing here? Go watch the show. Put me on to watch later. Just go watch it. It's a great show. Go find it online. It's probably there somewhere. But pretty much those three have survived so long because they went to Avalon, their lives were sustained there, time worked differently, and they are pretty good characters, but there's not really much to talk about them because they only have like 2 appearances, so they're not really big on the character front. So aside from the Archmage, who, okay, I'll talk about him a bit because he does deserve to be talked about. He was apparently feeling a whole lot of guilt after what he did to the Gargoyles, which makes sense. I mean, he turned them into stone for 1,000 years. It would make sense why he would feel big guilty about that. But now he's basically done everything in his power to make it up to them, while he also lost the person that he was in love with, which was the princess, and the princess fell in love with Tom because reasons, I guess, and so he basically, but he still stayed with him. He still was like, okay, yeah, I'm still gonna be loyal. I'm still gonna be a good friend. And he ends up dying for the princess, and he is a really good hero in the show. He was very noble on the show, and I thought that he was really cool. But there were some more heroes that came, more protagonists or good guys that came on the show, but there's not really much to talk about with them, so yeah, there's just not much of a topic because they're not there for that long. But now on to the fun part, the villain. After an intermission. Okay, so if you're wondering why I had an intermission there, because it's been here for 40, because it's been 40 minutes. Come on. You guys would have had to want an intermission. I'm just saying. It's been 40 minutes. Awesome. Thank you for watching still. If you are, I don't know. You guys might just clicked out or something and I'm just talking to no one. But in which case no one would hear me. But here's the fun part. Oh my gosh, the villains. Oh my gosh. I love these guys. I really do love all these villains. Except for a few. But most of the villains here are really good, really well developed, and all deserve some talking about. Like, I have no idea how these guys don't get that much attention today, but these guys were awesome villains. So, to start off, let's talk about Demona. Now, Demona was a very complex character. There's a lot that goes into her, so again, if you want to see for yourself, go watch the show. Put me on watch later. It is so much more interesting than hearing it from me. And then maybe come back and watch me, I don't know. If you want. I don't know. Or if you're still there. But, oh my gosh. Okay, so where do I start with her? There are a lot of aspects to talk about, but oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay, sorry. I forgot to do this. For the protagonists, I forgot to give them, a rating. So for the protagonists, I'm going to give them 4 out of 10. They're good characters, except for a few. Okay, but back onto the villains. I'm sorry, I just forgot to rate them. But the but, okay, so Demona is this gargoyle who has felt betrayed by humanity because of what they did to her kind 1,000 years ago, which is they massacred them. Like, this one Viking came in and massacred them. And her whole entire past is revealed in the episode City of Stone. If you haven't seen that one, go watch it. It is a great episode of the series, and it explains so much about Demona. It is a great episode, and it's definitely worth checking out. It really just makes you feel bad for this character. But it shows that she did make a deal with, the guy who betrayed the castle to make sure all her gargoyles would be protected and everything, but she didn't trust him, because even back then, she didn't trust humanity. So, what she did was, she hid. And she tried telling the other gargoyles about it, but then it was getting a bit too late, so she was just like, okay, well, who knows, maybe he'll come through. So, she went down and hid. Because what she really wanted for her kind was just them to be free and just be gargoyles, just be themselves, have fun and stuff. She didn't want them living under human rule, being ridiculed and everything, which makes sense. I mean, they do a lot for this freaking castle. And what do they get in return? How dare you exist? That's what they get. I mean, God, jerks. These people are just a-holes. But pretty much what she did was, when she comes back, because she of course came there before Goliath and Hudson came back, and before the trio and Bronx and the Rookery came out of the Rookery, so she came up and she sort of just scoped the place out and noticed that her whole entire family and everything was dead. So then she starts seeing Goliath coming down, so she's, of course, panicked a bit here, so she's like, oh crap, he'll be wondering why I wasn't smashed. Okay, you know what I'll do? Okay, I'm going to fly away. I'll tell him I couldn't just let him do this task on his own, so I came out there to help him, and when I came back, I noticed that all the gargoyles were smashed, so I just sort of went out to look for him. So she goes flying off, and she's waiting for him to come back, so then she can explain everything. But she waited for a bit too long, and when she comes back, they're stone at night. She sees them all turn into stone. She sees the eggs being packed away. So when all the eggs are packed away and everything, then what does she do? She starts crying because she's lost everything. Like Goliath, she has lost everything that she's ever known, and now it's on her own. So she decides to try and find other gargoyles because she doesn't know what to do anymore. So she goes off trying to find some of the other gargoyles and stuff, and when she, and then she finds her own clan, and she starts her own clan. They start stealing apples and stuff, which people apparently don't seem to mind, except for the hunter, who she scratched the face of, because she was in the mood to do that, I guess, while she was stealing apples, and of course this hunter was seeking vengeance upon them. So now her and her clan are spending their lives running away from this hunter. And this hunter is also the man who killed Macbeth's father. Yes, Macbeth is involved with this story. So she comes there while she's seeing the hunter killing him, and she's like, okay, well, now's my time for revenge, because he's killed quite a few of my clan, I'm gonna kill this guy. So she's going over there and fighting him while Macbeth's trying to save this girl who was trying to help, and then that girl and Macbeth is starting to fall over the castle, so she instead drops her revenge and goes down and grabs them, saving their lives. And then later on, she they repay her the favor when they meet up again while facing the hunter, and the same sort of thing happens, except the role is reversed. Now Macbeth saved Demona. Oh, and Macbeth also married that girl with Fawn, who was trying to save him. Just a side note there. So yeah, a lot of things are going into this so far, and pretty much what happens is they meet these three witches who are saying that if they work together, then they can take down the hunter. They don't listen for quite a few years, but then eventually they decide, okay, you know what? No, we're gonna listen. And so they finally listen, and they make a deal where Macbeth will trade some of his youth to Demona so then she can stay young forever, and Demona will then help Macbeth, seeing as he's in this big war and doesn't know what to do. So, and he saved her kind from being smashed one day, so they kind of owe him, so they're just like, yeah, okay, well, we kind of owe each other, so let's do this. Okay, yeah, sure. And they quickly become really good friends, actually. Who knew? But this war is still going on, and unfortunately, a lot of stuff happens in between this, but, pretty much, Demona overhears how some of the people in Macbeth's army are talking to Macbeth, saying, okay, you gotta get rid of these gargoyles. The French are planning on leaving us in this attack, in this war, and we really need their help. But he's saying no, but Demona doesn't hear that part because she leaves, because she stupidly decided to leave, like all characters in TV and movies do. And then she goes against Macbeth, where they both think that they've been betrayed by each other. Macbeth ends up dead, but then we find out a big secret. Demona and Macbeth's souls are connected in a way. Like, the only way that they can both die, because now apparently they're immortal because of the Weird Sisters spell. Yes, that's actually what they named these three, the Weird Sisters. Genius name. Now these they made a deal that the only way that they can die is if they both kill each other at the same time. They of course never decide to do this, but throughout the centuries they've been hunting each other down. Macbeth just not wanting to live anymore. He's lived on for far too long. There's just nothing else for him to do. He just feels like he's trapped. But Demona, still wanting to live, always refuses him. And so that's sort of another thing that brought her hatred for humanity again, is Macbeth's betrayal on her. Is that, like, the first time in, like, a century that she's actually starting to trust someone again, and she's been trusting him for so long. He even named her Demona, because she really liked that name, and yet what happens? She feels betrayed by him yet again. So no matter where she goes, she's always met with betrayal. That's it. Adding such a big tragedy to the character. Like, no matter what she did, no matter how many things she tried to do, she would always end up dead. Or some way she would always end up betrayal. And betrayal and constant betrayal. It would never end. Oh yeah, and the hunter, by the way, he ended up passing his hunting thing down through the generations, so basically they do enter modern day, but I'll talk about them later. He eventually has like 3 hunters, because one of his generations had 3 kids. And they all hunt gargoyles, pretty much. That's what they've been doing. But now Demona is still living, she's still immortal, but there's one thing that makes her another bit sympathetic. Not just all this betrayal, not just how she feels about humanity, not just everything that she's been through. There's some extra stuff that makes her even more sad of a character. Like I said, these characters would get very deep and interesting, and the villains are no exception. Now, one thing that happened to her, Angela. Angela is what happened. And also Thurnabog, who I'll talk about later, but Thurnabog's basically like Goliath's clone made by Thanatos, and also, Puck. I gotta bring up Puck here for her. There are a lot of things to bring up with her, but just like a quick little side note here, she's the one who introduced the character Puck. Awesome character, by the way. And what she ends up asking him for is to walk in the daylight. So she now has the spell on her that whenever it's daylight, and she can become human. But pretty much what happens with her and Angela is, while she was having told her really elaborate plan with Thurnabog, who was planning on just betraying her, again, more betrayal to add, very sad, she meets Angela, who is her daughter, and she's actually like, wait a minute, who are you? You look creepishly similar to me. Who on earth are you? So she finds out quite a while after who this young gargoyle is. It's her daughter. And when she finds this out, she's actually a pretty good person. What she does here is that Thurnabog had them all chained up, and she didn't want her daughter being hurt. So what she does is, she actually fights Thurnabog off, even though she thought that he was in love with her, but then she's like, he doesn't love me as much, and this is my daughter. So she fights him off, saving all these gargoyles, especially her daughter, and she she almost dies in a fire. Of course, she can't die because her thing with Macbeth, but I guess they forgot about that here, so they bring up how she might be dead in this fire, and Angela's actually very sad about it. She feels bad that the very last thing she might have told her mother is how she hated her. So, just another great tragedy for this character. There's so many things that make this character so sad. Mainly you've gotta watch her, but she's a very deceptive character. Also, when she's human, she actually gets a lot of money. Even when she's Gargoyle, she has a lot of freaking money. Like, she's able to buy this whole entire mansion with all these automatic, talking systems. Like, okay, yeah, do this, do that. Where'd you get the money? Did she just get a job in between centuries? And, like, yeah, okay, she got a job or something. How'd she get all that money? Really, how'd she get enough money for a mansion? I'm really jealous. How'd she get a mansion? How'd she do that? How'd she get a business? She actually does get a whole other corporation thing started while she's Gargoyle without that spell to turn her human during the day. Actually, it's revealed in that episode where that happens that she has all this. How did she get all this? Really, how did she get all this? Lainey's freaking rich. God, where did she get all that? But she's a very deceptive, very interesting character. And now on to my second favorite villain on the show, Xanatos. Oh my god, this guy is awesome. Basically, picture Tony Stark if he were a villain. Actually, this guy's exactly like Tony Stark. He even has a mechanical suit that he uses to fight his enemies. And basically, what he's craving in life is immortality because he never wants to die. Oh yeah, and he also marries a girl named Fox, who I'll talk about later, because she's also a villain, and awesome one at that as well. But, he starts off villain pretty much, and then becomes friend at the third season, but there's a lot going into that, and he's very interesting, he's very well developed. He's mainly a man of science, but he's still very fun. He's always one step ahead of the game, and later on in season 2 mainly, he's more like a trickster sort of character. Like, he's mainly pulls tricks, but he always has plans. He's always one step ahead. Like, he already has like 6 backup plans if his first plan doesn't go right. So he's very, very intelligent. He's got everything planned out. He basically views everything as like a game of chess, and yet he's holding all the pieces. So he's a great villain, really awesome, really smart, with a very cool voice, and actually very deceptive. At first you don't even know that he's a bad guy. He seems like a good guy. But then you find out, yeah, okay, he's obviously a bad guy, but he's still pretty cool. He still ends up like, I really want to hate him, but I just can't. And so he's a very fun character, and he definitely does have that keeping you guessing element. And then after him is Puck. And oh my gosh, I love this character. He doesn't even appear in the show that long. He's just like there for 3 episodes. Well, I guess there are 3 and 4. Like, he hardly appears in one episode. But he is so much fun. So interesting, actually. We don't really find that much about him. I mean, there's just kind of, yeah, he's Puck. You wanna know how he can do all this? Well, too bad. He's too cool. You can't know. So what started off as sort of a kind of easy to understand Shakespeare character from Midsummer's Night's Dream has been vastly updated for this show. Pretty much the very first time I would see him, he's in the episode Through the Mirror, which is of course the one that I talked about earlier with Demona. Demona has now stolen some mirror because she wants it, and the reason why she wants it is because Puck is inside. she wants to use Puck to basically exact vengeance on humanity, like what she pretty much does all the time, like what she always wants, and that's it. That's pretty much what she can. It's pretty much all up to Puck in this episode. It's just how can they represent this character? And they do it well. They do it really well. This character is so funny, so awesome. I mean, really, this character is just awesome. And just so interestingly made. Also, his animation style here is pretty good. He's a very fun character, and I think he's really cool. But what I think surprised everyone was his second appearance. Why? Well, here's a pretty big reason. Turns out, he's Owen. Who's Owen, you might be asking? Well, if you've seen the show, then you already know. You probably already know this twist. But Owen is Xanatos' right-hand man. He's sort of like the guy that works right beside him. He's a very cool character. He goes through a lot for him. He's very loyal. And now we actually find out why. Because he's Puck. So pretty much what he wants, pretty much to sum him up and how he came to be working with Xanatos is, about a millennium ago, I guess. Oberon decided, okay, all my magical people that I work with, go interact with humans for a while and see what you pick up. So Puck was actually kind of the one who didn't want to, but he said, no, this is gonna be kind of fun. So when they finally went off to do it, Puck took many forms, but he never really tried to be the straight man, as he says it. Being very stern, very wooden, and pretty cool. So he basically took the form of some guy, I forgot his name, and worked with Fox's mother and father, but they were very boring. So he decided to leave Fox's father and mother and instead go work with Fox and her husband. They were much more fun. And eventually he told Xanatos as to who he really was. Now, what he said was he could either give Xanatos what he wants, which is immortality, or he could give him a lifetime of service from Owen. Shocked by the answer, which was he chose Owen. And that made him very loyal and very surprised throughout the years. So he basically just takes the form of Owen. So pretty much, Puck's been there the whole time, we just didn't know it. And frankly, he's awesome. Owen is an awesome character as well. He's very wooden, he's very stern, but I think that's what makes him really cool. His design is pretty cool, much like Puck, and he's just kind of fun. I don't know what it is about Owen, but he's really cool. And so is Puck. Puck is a great character. He has so much, but he gave so much for such little time. Like, he only appears for like 4 episodes, and that's all he really needs. Now, sure, I do wish that they had a 4th season with him more involved in it, but mainly because they didn't wrap up all the loose ends on the show. Like, we don't know what happened with Demona, or Puck, or Xanatos and Fox's son. Oh yeah, they have a son, named Alex, but it was actually kind of cool. But you know, I'm really happy with what they did with Puck, and he was really cool. So now after him, you're probably wondering, who on earth is this Fox character I'm talking so much about here? Well, she's a member of the Pack, who I will talk about next. Fox is the leader of this group that was started by none other than David Xanatos. Yes, he seems to be in charge of everything around here. So what happened with them is that they would just sort of work behind the scenes with Xantos, not knowing that, none of them except for Fox knowing that they actually worked for Xantos. In fact, one of the times they were even hired to do an assassination for Xantos by Xantos. Makes sense. Totally genius plot they have there. I don't even know what he was in it for there. I think the reason why he was in it, why he did this, was to get Fox out, because apparently they had been starting a sort of love thing going on, and they did this whole entire elaborate plot with the Pack trying to murder Dave Santos and Fox refusing to go and spend her time in prison. Oh yeah, she's in prison because of the episode Thrill of the Hunt, which is the episode I talked about earlier with Lexington in it. Basically that's what happened with them. They were eventually locked in jail. And pretty much Fox was the one who stayed out in jail, so she got out on good behavior. So what happened? She got married to Santos because they were equal. And from there she eventually had a child. She's having a lot of childs in that season. It was season 2, and that's kind of the point, that they had children in season 2. And what happened is she realized, oh my god, my mother is Titania. Then, again, I guess that'd be kind of my reaction too. What are you gonna do about it? Not be born? I don't know. And mainly that's where Fox's story ends. Yeah, she pretty much finds out, oh my gosh, my mother's Titania. Okay. Although she does appear some more still, and she is still kind of a fun character, but she doesn't really have much outside of that story-wise. Pretty much from there, she's out of the show. She didn't really contribute that much aside from Alex, and yeah, she's a good mother, I guess. Although she does have a cool husband too, and a husband who teaches his son to say harassment. If you watch the show, then you would come to expect that. But pretty much Fox is a pretty cool character. She's a good fighter. She's sort of like Santos, again, being like one step ahead of everything. She knows what's going on. But she kind of follows Santos a bit more, so that kind of makes her a little bit more just sort of following orders. But she also has her own plans, and which you haven't seen in other episodes. She's a very interesting character at times. And then after her, we have, of course, the one that I've been talking about involved with her, the Pack. Okay, so the Pack. There's not really much to say about them, but I will talk about each individual member. Aside from Fox, because I just talked about her. Now, first off, there's Wolf. He's kind of just the strong guy in the group, and he does act kind of rash. And then there's Jackal and Hyena, who are kind of fun, actually. Like, these two are two twins, but they're really interesting. They're pretty fun. They do have some funny lines here and there, but I found them being, like, my second favorite out of the Pack, aside from Fox. It was still really cool. And then after them is Dingo. He's the Australian guy. I don't know. He's pretty cool, and later on in season 2 he does get more interesting development, but not all that great, and some could argue, yeah, he's not the best of a good villain or anything. But the Pack's still pretty cool. And now on to Macbeth. Okay, so I already talked about Macbeth here. I already brought up what happened with him. So I don't need to reiterate as to what happened. But I still do need to talk about him. But this one's going to be kind of short, seeing as I already brought him up with Demona and everything. Now, when he came onto the show, he was very mysterious. Because what you hear at first is him saying, pretty much, I'm looking, I did all this stuff, I got all these gargoyles, I got all you guys, so then you guys, this queen would come in. Goliath, of course, asking, what, we don't have a queen. And then he brings up Demona. Goliath, of course, curious as to what the heck and how does he know Demona, what the heck's going on. He asks, how do you know her? And he simply replies, he named her. That's all we find out until, like, episode 13 or something in season 2. This goes on for a while, keeping the mystery very high as to how did he know Demona? And what's their history here? Of course, it is all revealed in, like, a 4-part episode, but you're still wondering, wow, what did he go through all these centuries? Just like, he couldn't fall in love with anyone, because if he did, then he wouldn't want to suffer the heartache of having to lose that person. He couldn't be with his family, because people will think it's witchcraft, that he's come back from the dead. Oh yes, he was stabbed. Forgot to bring that up. And frankly, he didn't really have that much to do. It was just sort of him being alone for centuries. This is another very sympathetic character, but I don't know if I can really classify him as a villain. Because, yeah, he has done some villainous stuff, but he's not really all to blame. I mean, one of the times I did some of this villainous stuff, God, I'm sorry, my throat is really killing me here. He was under control of the Weird Sisters, who I will talk about next. And one of the other times, he was a robot made by Xanatos, so those are like his 2 biggest villainous acts there, too. And yet, he didn't have anything to do with them. Not willingly, at least. So, really, the biggest crime that he's done is try and kill Demona. Screams villainy there, doesn't it? Killing Demona. Truly, the worst act he can ever conceive. But you don't really know if he's a villain or just an anti-hero. But, God, my throat. Okay, I would probably classify him more as an anti-hero. So he's a very good character. He has a lot of depth to him, and you really do feel kind of bad for him. And then after him, we have the Weird Sisters. Not too much to say about them, but they really built up the mystery with these. Wondering, who the heck are these people? How can they do all this? How can they do all this magic? But never really answered, and they're mainly just like the Gargoyles of Avalon, so they're pretty cool. I really did wish that there was a bit more to them, though. Then after them, probably the last one I'm gonna talk about, okay, I've got 2 more left. One of them came from the 3rd season. I'm gonna talk about them right now. These were the sort of KKK of the group, of the show. God, my throat is hurting me so much. I'm so sorry. It's just like my throat really hurts. I've been doing this for a while. It's been like an hour of review, and I usually don't go this long. So my throat, I don't know, it's just annoying, I guess. Deal with it, throat, so I'm doing this. So pretty much, the KKK kind of group here that they got is kind of a cool group. It's kind of a neat group. You really wonder, though, why do they hate these gargoyles so much? I mean, it is shown, and this is sort of more of the commentary part of the show, where they're just like, oh yeah, this is like racism and symbolism here. And that's kind of painfully obvious. So that's kind of what these guys are here for, but they don't seem to be the best way to close out the show, which unfortunately they were. Yes, these are the last villains the Gargoyles take, and they're really just ordinary people with hoods. You would think that they would go out like fighting Oberon or something, this huge wizard guy, but no, just some guys in masks. Again, truly their greatest foe. Um, then after them is Coldstone. Um, I don't. It's another character I don't know whether or not to say is an anti-hero. He certainly has done some bad things, but again, like Macbeth, they're not all his fault. He's basically made up of smashed gargoyles from the massacre that happened 1,000 years ago, but basically he's been tricked by Demona and Xanatos into thinking that Goliath let them all die. So basically, he's not to blame there. And when he eventually does come back, he wants to befriend Goliath, but then he has a virus because he's half machine, half gargoyle. So this virus causes him to pretty much go insane. Um, Eventually, they just work on trying to fix him, which leads to my personal favorite episode, my personal second favorite episode, Possession, where basically all the gargoyle souls are being swapped everywhere. Um, Very confusing episode because you don't really know who's who. There's a lot of shape-shifting, there's a lot of possessing going on. It's very interesting episode. Um, but pretty much that's where he ends. They say they'll come back, but they never do. I don't know if they ever came back in the comics, but they don't come back on the show. And then after them is the very last one. Thank God. Titania and Oberon. These guys, there's not much to say about them. They're basically the characters from Midsummer Night's Dream, but a little bit more annoying. Titania, while being a better character than Oberon, is still not that good of a person. She says that she's doing stuff that's good, but really, a lot of people could have died under what she's done. Oberon's the same, except he doesn't really feel any morality. He doesn't really feel like, oh no, my god, I could kill people. No, he's just like, if it happens, it happens. So, pretty much there's the villains. I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10. Not all of them are that great or fleshed out. There are definitely by the near end of the series, they sort of lost their characters, but there were still some that were very good and very memorable. So, again, 8 out of 10. They do great with what they had. Villains are very memorable and very enjoyable. And now on to the animation. Okay, so for the animation in this part, this is by far going to be the shortest. There's really not that much to talk about. It's pretty much just your simple Disney animation. Like what happened in the 90s with Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, Gummy Bears, which I'm surprised was apparently a big inspiration of the show. Adds up. And all sorts of stuff like that. So pretty much it's just that animation here, but I will say that it never feels cheap. All the movements are very fluent, and the color palette is very nice and does have a lot of vibrant colors. Since the show mainly takes place at night, they do use this to their advantage. And the lighting's nice, like especially when David Xanatos is first shown, like he looks like a villain, and when Demona first comes out of this like dark closet, the lighting there is very nice, although other times their lighting can be pretty bad. It just depends on how you look at the animation. So for it, I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 10. It's nothing original, but it's pretty good as is. It didn't have to be distinct for it, at least. Okay, so in the final part of this review, which I know you're probably very excited about because it's finally done, but in this part, I'm going to be talking about the different seasons on the show, sort of like what happened after. So there's not much to talk about in season 1 or 2 that I haven't already talked about, so I'll just touch on them slightly. Again, there was a City of Stone story arc, which explained what happened with Demona and her past and how she got her name and everything. Pretty cool episode, couple of episodes, and it's definitely worth watching if you're a fan of the show. It's definitely one of their best. But they're not. But I think everyone who's watched the show can agree which one their best is, which is Through the Mirror. Now, this episode is the introduction of Puck. We get a lot of cool things that go on in this episode, but I don't want to ruin it for you here because it's just too much fun. You gotta watch it for yourself, and it's very enjoyable. It's a very cool story arc, so it's a pretty cool idea they got going on with this. So go check it out. Then my second favorite episode is Possession, um, which is another great episode. It has Puck in it. I already talked about it, so go check it out there if you guys want to go watch it. Just go check it out. It's really cool. Then there's a very long Avalon story arc. Pretty much, we just find out that Tom, the princess, and the Archmage have all gone onto Avalon, where they've been raising the eggs. We find out how they got there, and apparently that the eggs are in danger. So, they go save them. Incredible story, isn't it? But then that leads to the most boring arc on the show. God. Okay, this arc is the boat arc. That's pretty much what it is. It's just Goliath, Elisa, and Angela are on a boat. You engaged yet? Yeah, that's pretty much the whole entire story. But it goes on for like 20 episodes. So it just makes you wonder, good God, are they ever going to be done with this? But it does at least introduce the character of Angela a little bit, and pretty much her whole entire two-bit of personality. Yeah, she's just the girl who's pretty strong and interesting, I guess, but nothing's really all that developed about her. And that's pretty much what they do with that story. Just like, yeah, we're trying to introduce this new character as a very good, interesting, complex character without adding the good, interesting, or complexity. So that's pretty much what happens in there. Then, near the end of season 2, we get to see Oberon and Titania. These two are after Xanatos and Fox's baby. Oh yeah, did I mention that Xanatos and Fox had a baby? Yeah, they had a baby. Named Alex, who actually sort of makes Xanatos transition into being a good guy for his son, which is pretty good. But, okay, wait a minute. So, one thing I forgot to bring up about the boat arc. There is one good episode. Which one is this? Future Tense. This episode is great. Okay, basically what happens in it is Goliath, Elisa, and Angela find out that, yay, we've gone back to New York. But they find out that it's apparently a little bit more dystopian than they remember, and that it's been about 50 years or such ever since they left. Matt Bluestone is now older, as are most of the Gargoyles. Hudson is dead. Broadway has no eyes, yet can still cry. Kind of creepy and sad at the same time. And that Xanatos has now apparently reached his goal of immortality. But, much like Through the Mirror or Possession, I won't spoil it for you here. It's a really good episode, and what goes on in it, there's tons of turns and tons of surprises. Go check it out for yourself if you want to know. But it's awesome. And that pretty much wraps up season 2. There are some hunters that come in, basically the offspring of the hunter that Demona sort of created. Um, Basically, they're just obsessed with killing gargoyles, mainly, in particular, Demona, and their whole entire family has, their whole entire generations upon generation have been killed by Demona, so it makes sense why they would want revenge. Um, so there's not too much outside of that, it's just kind of, yeah, they're like this. We're glad to know that they never come back. They introduce you to 3 characters, but the one that says, no, I'm gonna get revenge, never gets revenge. Really need that story there. And then the final one is season 3, also known as the Goliath Chronicles. This is by far the worst season. There's not much to talk about except for what they have here is basically character-centered episodes, sort of like what Gravity Falls has been doing as of late, like having picking out one character and then making them the star of the episode, and then sort of going along with that. Not that great of a season, and I definitely have to say there are some bad ones, like Broadway Goes to Hollywood. Yeah, that's an actual episode. But at least they tried? I don't know. It's not that great, and that's definitely a point where you can stop watching. They don't really wrap anything up with a big note or anything. It's just kind of mediocre. So for the other seasons, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. They're not that great, especially 3, but they're still pretty fun. So for the show overall, it had very well developed characters, a very interesting story, and pretty cool premise. It's definitely a fun show, and I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. I really love this show. It's my favorite show. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's definitely worth the search. And next week, I'm going to be taking a look at The Haunted Mansion. Bye. Sorry this was so long, by the way.